Hello again, my lovely people of the internet, and welcome back. Once again, thank you very much for waiting. It was pretty hectic in my life for the past couple of months, but I'm back and I've done quite a lot of work on this project. So let's have a look here. So as far as I know, the last time we were working on this was we built this row of tiles here using simple context generation in one view, and we just put that as context. So I changed the approach here because I thought maybe we want to use our Ajax for getting data using, for now we just use jQuery, but for the future we might use that approach using REST framework and React.js. So then we can have everything modularized. So anyway, so for now, the way it's split is that we have each row. So this row is generated using one call. Here is another call, and here are two calls. So that's why I thought I'm going to stop here and take you through it. It's going to be one of those, I already built this code and now I'm going to just show you what I've done tutorials. I'm sorry about that, but I just wanted to put something up, and that's the fastest way. And also, it's not really about learning Django. It's just figuring out how to get certain data in here. So anyway, I'm gonna just go back to my code, and maybe let's start with the views. There's a lot of files changed. Let me just close those that weren't changed. There is a couple of them here that needed to be changed. Not too many, but we'll go through them anyway. So one thing I'm very happy about is the fact that I did the git. Although I know it doesn't work right now, something weird is happening. It's been flagged. I didn't get any message back from, first I didn't get any feedback. Why would it be flagged from GitHub? And now I am waiting over a week for a response. So I might use another vendor for my bucket, for my repo, and just ditch GitHub and replace that link. So just be patient, please. But anyway, having Git in general, is not GitHub, it's Git in this case, helps me to track the changes that I've done in my code. And it's going to be very easy now to show you what happened across the code. So let's maybe scroll all the way up, because on the right side, you can see those little colors here. These indicate the changes in my code overall. So this is the slider, and I can slide to the changes. I can see a couple of insertions here because it's green. Blue is change, and red would be deletion. So let's go all the way here, and I can see that I imported a couple of new imports. So we have date and time delta. In here, we are getting HTTP response, redirect, and also JSON response. Scrolling down, I can see there is a change done here. I'm not sure what happened here. It looks like a new line that was just entered here. So that's not a change you should be interested in. I was just putting those line breaks just to see what's where. So not a big important stuff. Important stuff happens here. So where we left it the last time was this current finances view was doing a lot of calculation, and it was spitting some information into context, and we put that context into this render, and then in current finances HTML we use that context to generate those 4 tiles. Right now what I do is I only check if we have something to work off of, and then if we don't, we just say, hey, there is nothing to show, and we just render this HTML. And now I'm thinking there should be something also that won't, if we know that there's no balance, there's no way to call all of those views, which are like an Ajax calls that we're doing from here. So I'm going to change this today. Right, and I'm going to change it now because obviously I finished my video, an hour video, and then I forgot about this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do messages, and I'll also say, let's say here, make calls. Initially I say true. Yeah, I assume we were gonna do the calls after we get this balance. Unless we don't find it, then we change it to false, and then we use that as the context. So make calls is make calls. Okay, it's either true or false. So here, that's a very simple, just a renderer of this HTML. Which is that view here, that URL, just current finances slash. So nothing new here. But what is new is that we call those functions to spit back that data that then, because it's a JSON response, and we send that request by jQuery, and we ask, could you give us a JSON response so we can put that into specific places in our HTML. So it's being injected here, 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 and here. Okay, so let's scroll up. And the way I name them is that here is going to be a slash. So here is current finances, and then we're getting some data to that view. So current finances slash get summary tiles. And these are my summary tiles. Okay, so that's basically the same thing that we had previously in this view, except for a couple of fixes that I've done to the code because it wasn't calculating the data the way I wanted it to calculate. Basically, the change was whenever I do the balance check, so I record a balance, that should be for today. It doesn't matter if there was an income or outcome. I want to just keep that check to be the balance that we finish the day with. If we set the balance to 1,000 and there is an outcome of 100, I don't go down to 900. I just want that to be just 1,000 at the end of that day, no matter what happened. Okay, but anyway, this is what's happening here. It's pretty similar again. So I just moved some stuff around. Here we have the last balance that we check. If it's not there, we just send that error here. Then we initialize our total income. And then if it's, so we just summarize all the incomes between certain dates. And then we check if it's there. If it's not, we just make it 0, the same for outcome. And then we go through the repetitive ones. So, and then in here, oh yeah, and let me see what changed there. Seems to be the same. So we send that back as JSON back to the HTML or jQuery actually, and it's all in here, and I'll show you that file in a second, but basically that's our summary tiles, and we do something with that data. Okay, and it's being injected rather than just put in as context and generated by Django and sent back. Okay, so here is new stuff. Here is how we approach, where is it? Here. This is how we generate this view, how we generate this graph. And this graph is supposed to show us what was going on our account throughout the year, from 1st of January to the last day of December. So as you can see here, it's the legend. We have the balance checks here. So you can see, you can hover over and see, okay, that check was 2,000. So the estimated balance was 2,000 by default. We don't add or subtract from there because that's our check. You see here, we were at certain level. And then I said, no, the check is actually here. It's 1,000. So there's that drop here. And that's the purpose. That's the idea for me. So basically we have certain repetitive incomes and outcomes. We have certain incomes and outcomes that we just add on the fly, and then it's supposed to estimate the money that we have at the moment. And here we have the balance today, so that's the yellow stuff. And it's supposed to show us roughly where we are. And then if we want to see, okay, I'm going to check my bank account, my wallet, whatever, and I'm going to add up all the money I have, and I'll put it in here because you know, this line is just an estimation. And I want that estimation because I want to see where am I at the moment. Although let's say I did the check a week or two before. Obviously I'm not exactly, you know, I spent some money on coffee or some, you know, extra stuff, and then it kind of adds up. But also I want to see what's going to happen if I stick to my plan, if I stick to my repetitive expenses and incomes and outcomes. What happens at the end of the year? I want to see where am I going, and you know, so I can see an incentive to keep going that way. Obviously it's not what I'm making. I wish I was saving 30K a year, but anyway. So yeah, so let's go back to our views and see the current finances get year chart. So again, current finances / get year chart. And that's our year chart. And I think I was supposed to move them because this is since the last check. This is since the last check. And this is kind of like overall. So I want to split these two so it makes more sense. But anyway, I'll do that in a second. Let's have a look here. Request, today. Obviously, we check what's today. We set the beginning of the year, obviously. So we have that as a date type. And then we check the last, actually, it's not the last day of December, again, because I'm lazy and I want something that works for each and every month. I stick to just staying out of 29th, 30th, and 31st of any month, because it gets a bit more complex and I'm just being lazy here. So I go from 1st to 28th of each year. It's not very smart, because what if I'm checking my bank, my situation here, my graphs on 30th of December. So yeah, I might need to come up with something. But just to keep the ball rolling, I know I want to move towards Django, REST, and React very soon. So I'm not going to spend too much time on complex algorithms. So here we're going to try to get the first balance before the beginning of the year. So we can if it was somewhere in December last year, we can calculate what's the first of. If it's not there, it's going to just take the first one of the year. So let's go here. We have our user type 1, which is current, then date lesser than or equal to the beginning of the year. So if I did the check on the first, that's perfect, because I don't have to calculate anything anymore. But if it's before, that's okay, because I'm going to add and subtract incomes and outcomes, and I'm going to end up here somewhere. Okay, and then we order by date minus date, and we get the first one off the top. So that's the latest of before this year. If it's not there, we're trying to get the one from this year. So anything that is the oldest, then and I order by date, not minus date, because I'm looking for the oldest balance, because it's going to be this year anyway. So give me the oldest one I can find. If it's not there, then we have to go back with the response that there's an error and there's no balance recorded, so we can't do anything. Cool. And then, okay, here we, assuming we found some balance, we start working on our algorithm. And in here, we're going to collect some data for balance checks. So every time there was a check done, I want to put that into a dictionary. I don't want to have that in database only and, check that balance and call that database each time. I want to check every day if there was a balance check or not. I want to check all the balance checks, and put them in here. And I'm going to do it in here. The same for incomes per day and outcomes per day, including repetitive ones and non-repetitive ones. Okay, and in here I'm collecting all the balance objects. So again, it's going to be the user that I'm logged in as, and here it's the type current balance, type 1. Then we specify that it has to be greater than or equal to date of the balance that we found. So this balance here is the balance that I found that is our kind of jumping off point. This is either for the last one before this year or first one in this year. And we want to get all of them since that balance. So including, as you can see, that E means I'm going to include that balance that I found before. And then I just add one by one to this dictionary. And as a key, I use the date, but as a string. So it's going to be a dash separated date. And in here, I set it to a value of that balance. So whatever, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. I think I'm using euro, but I'll show you how to use dollars. And I'm not going to play with setting your currency, because it's simple, but also takes time. Okay, so I'm doing similar thing with incomes, but not repetitive ones first, and the same with outcomes. So I'm just checking from that date until today, and I think I don't like it. I shouldn't be here because we want to go from here, but we don't need to stick. I think I copied that from above. So I don't need this. So let me just get rid of this. Basically, I want every single income and outcome. We are here today. So if I recorded a outcome here, 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 but also here, I want to have that in my calculation. So I don't want to stop at today. So I'm going to delete that here. Repetitive, okay, that's false because I'm not doing repetitive here. I'm going to do repetitive below. And in here, and in here. Yes, so I'm using this. I'm tapping into this dictionary. And again, the same as a key, I use the date. And then I either set that to that value that I found, so some income value, if there is not that key in income per day. So let's say 1st of Jan, I found before I found that there is an income on that day. So I did create this income per day of that date, which was the value of that income. So I found another income on that day, because that can happen. I want to add those two values. So I'm doing that in here. So either there is not that record yet, so I just assign that value, or if else, I add that value. So I take whatever was there and I add i.value. The same happens here. Exactly the same, but with the outcomes. Okay. And then we're doing the repetitive incomes and outcomes. And I had to change this calculate repetitive total to make it work. And what I'm doing here, and I'm not sure if it's the best pattern, because maybe I shouldn't be reusing the same function. So, but that's what I went with, and it's not perfect, but for now it kind of served the purpose. So before we would use it and we would put that income there, so some object, then balance where we start and the end of the repetition. So where we want to stop counting. And then in here is a new thing that I added there, and it's income per day dictionary that we want to pass in there so we can update that dictionary in our function. So let's go there, and I'm holding command and clicking on this function. There is a couple of changes that I've done here. So this stays exactly the same. It checks if we're operating on days or months, and if it's 7 or 12 or 1. Whatever. So there's no change here, but there is a change here. I added one more argument, and I defaulted to none, just because I don't want to go back in my code and fix every use of this function. What I'm doing here, I'm like, okay, whatever we did before, that's gonna work. We don't need to add this argument here and set it to something. If we didn't specify this result dict, we're gonna just default it to none, and then we check if it's none. So if result dict is none, then we do whatever we did before, but in other way, but else we actually do something additional to what it was before. And one change I can see here, that's blue, so I changed that. I think I added this equal here because that was the reason I was getting incorrect calculation here. So just make sure you have this equals here. But in here, that's where the real change happens, this bit here. So as I said, we check if it's none. If it's none, do what you did before. So everything that was used with this function will work. But else, do this. Take this result dict and check and assign something to this date. And it's the same thing as before. We're checking if that date is already in result dict. And if it's true, we just assign that object value. Otherwise, we add to whatever was in there before. Okay? So we're doing exactly the same thing as we were doing here, but we do it in repetitive, for repetitive incomes and outcomes. Okay? And then in here we have check, blah, blah, blah. And in here, there's a small change. So instead of just returning total, we also are able to return that result dict, which I don't love. And I feel like I'm teaching you bad things, because how can you, I mean, it is possible to be able to send back in Python. It's so loose and it's so flexible, and you can do those shortcuts. And it's a little bit messy, but it works. But my problem with it is you can send an integer as a result of this function, or you can send a dictionary, which is kind of like, usually you want to stick to one data type. But anyway, this is what happens, to be honest. And also because Python references things by reference, so it uses pointers basically. When I pass this in here, you see I'm not assigning this result to anything. I'm just calling this function. I don't care what it returns. This return just goes into the space, because what I'm doing here, I'm passing on already existing dictionary. I pass it here. So whatever change I do inside of this function, it still holds. I make a change to something that exists in the memory that I can access from this function as well as from this function here. Okay. So I don't care about the result. I just want to modify this income per day and outcome per day dictionary. And let's scroll down, and in here we have some, okay, so in here I'm just preparing, let me see, preparing places for data that will be sent back to here. Okay, so these 4 lists will stand for the labels, and those 3 data sets. Okay, that's where the data comes from. In here, so we have labels, data estimated, which is blue line. Then we have data balance check. So these are the green dots. And then we have data today, which is just like one piece of data, but it's a nice marker. And I was like, well, I want it there. It doesn't look great in my backend, but let's just do it, because let's be honest, it's nice to know where we are today, especially because I hit the problem with the labels, which basically I couldn't filter out in the newer. Oh yeah, there was another problem. Charts.js has a newer version since the last time. So basically in between, before we were using 2.9, I think, charts.js 2.9, and now I have 3.5 or something. And for some reason, something I could do in the previous version can't be done in here with the labels. But anyway, let's go back here, date marker. So it's like a marker, it's a pointer where we are looking at. I want to go day by day now. I go from the first balance I found all the way to the end of the year. Okay, that's what I'm going to do in here. And then I have the balance on marker date. So I'm going to calculate what is the final balance on that specific day, day by day by day. Okay, so first I'm checking if the date marker is after, so it's greater than the beginning of the year. We want to fill the marker, we want to fill the data sets with null, with none in this case. So if my first balance check was here, I want all of these be none. So it's like I'm looking at the whole year and I can see that half of it is not recorded. That's what would happen thanks to this. If I didn't do it, I would have, if my first balance check was in 27th of May, this 27th of May would be here. That would be the beginning of my chart. And it would be slightly misleading to me. Okay, so let's see what I'm doing here. So I'm creating a marker from the 1st of Jan, so I can go one day by day and make sure every single one is none. And in here, so while this fill date is less than the date marker, so the first day when from the balance, if you go back, I'm gonna just select this one and look where, okay, here, balance.date, and that balance is the first balance I found. We're gonna count from, okay? So I'm checking here, let me just, I'm just checking here, as long as we were before that day, let's just fill that with that date. So all the labels fill with the date, and then data estimated, balance check, and today, all filled with none, up until the day where we start calculating date marker. And then we just add one day here. Else, so I didn't have to do else. If I took that out, that would still work because it's either done or not. It doesn't matter for this loop, but I put that else here just, I don't know, to inform the programmer that this date marker is either before or after beginning of the year, because when it's before, in here, I want to calculate what's happening before that year. We want to calculate what's happening here and then be like, okay, 1st of January, we have 219, and that's where we are at the very beginning of the year. Okay, so here we're checking, as long as this date marker is before the beginning, do this. Do the calculation. So to the balance on the day when we're checking, add any income that we found in our dictionary. So we get so that's the date. If it's not there, if we don't have any income, just add 0. The same do with outcome, but we're using minus here. And the same here, and we just go one day after day. And then in here, we can start actually working. This is 1st of Jan when we move into the, so it depends. If we started here, obviously it's not going to be 1st of Jan, but if we found some balance before this year, that's going to be the 1st of January. Okay, and so we do this while loop as long as we move towards the end of the year. So if we started here, we're going to just one by one go all the way to here. If we start here, the same story. Okay, so first we check. As I said before, the balance checks have the higher value than the incomes and outcomes. So if I checked my balance today, that day is my final balance. Okay, that's the rule. So first I'm checking if that day is in my checks. So I have that dictionary here where I was gathering all my checks. And by doing this, now I don't need to go back to the database. I can just check it in my dictionary that I built for quicker response and quicker gathering data. It takes more memory, you know, instead of keeping it in database and checking the database every time. I have it in the memory, but it's way faster. So it's a trade-off here. If it's true, then I just set it to that check. Okay, so I say balance on that day will be the balance checks from that day. Okay, and then I add that to the list that will be used here for those green ones. So also at the same time, I'm doing two things at the same time here, because obviously if I found balance on that day, not only I want to use it as my value of estimated, like in here, you see that it drops to 1,000, which is the balance check, but also I want to use that for the circle as well. So I use that for for blue line as well as the green circle. That's what's happening here and here, because this value will go to here, to the estimated. I'm going to append that. Else, if it's not there, if it's not the balance check day, then I'm adding all the incomes, I'm subtracting all the outcomes if they exist. So the same story as here. And then balance check, append none. And I'm appending none because I need those 4 lists that stand for all the labels and all the data sets for this, and this. They all have to be the same length. So if I have 5 labels, I have, 5 days, I need to have data for 5 days for each of these data sets. So if I have no data, I need to set it to none. Otherwise, it's going to get messed up. I append these labels. I'll put that on top so I feel the flow a bit better. Why would I append that here if I could append it straight away? First step should be labels and then different data sets. Okay, and in here I have some data estimated. So I append whatever I get. It's either the balance or the calculated incomes and outcomes. I append it to the estimated, so I can go up and down on that line. And then one last check if it's today. So I got that at the very beginning here. So I just remember that today is today. So I'm checking if it's today. Oh, add that value to today. Otherwise, assign none. And that's how we get this little circle here. It's all none. And then so 354 nones, and then minus 3 at the end. And then 1 piece of data here, and then none again. So that's how I got that. And at the very end, I'm just adding 1 day to the date markers. I'm moving one by one with this while loop. And one by one, I'm generated, and it's not so slow. So don't worry about if it's a good fast algorithm. It's fast enough for this. As you can see, it gets generated in a split second. So, and at the end, I'm sending this as a JSON response. Using those 4 lists. So labels is labels, then data estimated is data estimated, and so on. Okay, and we started here, initialized, crunched, and sent away. And the last new view is the one that generates the data for those 2 views, those 2 graphs. Let's go up here and see what it does. It's very similar. First, I decided to go and not split hair in here. So it's going to get income as well as outcome because it's very similar. It's just slightly different. So I managed to just say, hey, check with the call. So from the get, when you do the, at the end, you do question mark and get what equals blah, blah, blah. That's how you pass those arguments here. So it can be income or outcome. So I'm checking here if it's either none or it's not income or outcome. I go back and say, hey, I'm looking for income or outcome. Nothing else will yield any information from here. And then, okay, if this is income, then this is the object income, and then object types is income.itypes. As you can remember, we had those in, let me go back to, where was it? my finances and models here. I types, yeah, salary, bonus, gift, and other. So let's go here. That's going to be my object types. Otherwise, this is going to be outcome and outcome.otypes, outcome types. And again, the same. I'm recording that today is today. And using date, not date time, by the way. It makes certain things easier. And I'm checking the last balance because again, just like, so that's why I want to move these around. Just like with this row, we are just checking the period between the last balance and today. So I'm checking between last balance, so the latest one basically. What's the latest balance? If it's not there, say, sorry, there's nothing to find. If it was like 2 years ago, it would work, although it's not great, but it would work. But since there's nothing, then you get that error here. And from this view here, we are not getting much data. Is just labels and the data, that is the data set here for those values here. So let's see what happens with those. So whatever object type it is, it's either outcome.otypes or income.itypes, we check the choices. So by getting choices, and I'm going to put a breakpoint here and try to refresh, just refresh, you'll see what I mean by, so object type, let's look for object type. It's a tuple. It says one salary. Let's go again to models. One salary. That's what we get from choices. If I go back here, I'm saying, hey, let's go through choices of this object type. So in here, I have one. So if I want to get salary, I need to do this. Okay. So I'm appending that to labels so I can get those. Let me just release that. These are the labels here. So I want to have salary, bonus, gift, and other. So that's in here. So I'm appending first labels, and then I'm calculating for each object type. So I go through salary, bonus, other, whatever, in case of incomes, because their outcomes are different. And I'm just totaling similarly as before. So I'm just saying, hey, give me stuff that is from and greater than, not equal. Keep an eye on that one, because we don't want to go from that day. Because whenever there is a balance done, that's kind of king. That stays there. We don't calculate anything from that day. And we go all the way to today, including today. Okay, repetitive false. So for now, we're just summing up. We are aggregating all those incomes between those, sorry. Oh, there you go. So for object type, that should be object. And that's why I was having some problems there. So here we go, and that's the total. Object, objects, option command L. So object, whatever income outcome, objects filter, and we are filtering this and aggregating the total. And then if it's not there, if it's none, then go ahead and assign 0 in there. And in here, we do the calculate repetitive, just as we did for the first view here, for the tiles. So here we have this total, income and outcome. We had to split that. In here, I didn't split that. I just said, hey, if it's income, just call it object and then do it on the object variable, which it can be income or outcome. And then we just add that to total one by one, and then append it to data. So if we have appended, so let's say here, salary, in here, we're going to append a total for salary, and so on and so forth for each of these types. Okay, and at the end we have labels, data, and that's it. That's it for the changes in the views. Let me see again this view here. Let me reload and see, boom, that looks very nice. Everything is working. So we somehow, using those 3 new views or URLs, because I had to put them in here. So as you can see, this was here before. We had that one current finances view or URL, but in here I added also those 3 URLs that are getting the data for the tiles, for charts, and for outcome or income or outcome by type. So I guess here we covered all the changes in URLs. So I'm going to put that here as done. And now helpers, I think we did do all the changes here. So we added this. Oh yeah, small change to add interval to date. So I had to, I forgot about adding 12 months. So if you add 12 months in here, what happens is you get here 0. You have no rest. So basically, there's no month 0. This means we just add 1 year and 0 months, which is, the same month. So we have to go back to the original month instead of setting this to 0. But yeah, except for that, it works. So, okay, helpers are done. Now, now that's the big one, right? Well, it's not the big one as much as this one here. So that's a very new file where we have all our charts. So maybe let's go through the HTML because it's a bit simpler. So these are the tiles here. All I did was I was making sure that elements that need to be controlled somehow. Before we had this if-else statement here saying if there is context, then do this. If not, then instead of all this, or I think all this, just say, sorry, there's no data. And that's what I'm doing with jQuery or JavaScript. Well, jQuery is JavaScript. So I need to ID those elements that I want to replace, or I want to, instead of this, I want to inject new HTML because there is an error. There is no data to be shown. There is some message that we need to inject there. Okay, and in here, as you can see, let me just click here so we don't have any other highlights on my left. And in here, I can see there are some changes. So before we had those context data injected here. Instead, we just leave those divs empty and we ID them. So we can grab them using jQuery. And it's the same for, sorry, let me just click here. It's the same for this one here. Again, ID is here, but no data inside. What's going on? Let me just scroll down here. All the same things. So let me just make sure you guys have seen all the IDs from the top. This one is last balance value. This one last balance date. So these go here and here. Then let's scroll down lower. Estimated balance. That's for this one here. Total income. That's for this one here. And that's total outcome. That's for this one here. Okay. And then in here, yeah, for this one, I added the whole thing from, let me go to templates and to my website where we have our samples. So if I go here and I go to samples, we have this. And I was like, I'll start with the canvas at least, and then I'll just inject whatever I want to inject in here. But first I can start with canvas. So canvas are in HTML. And I did that. I went here and let me just scroll all the way up. These are the tiles. So I can see here, row and area chart. That's what I'm looking for. I changed these a bit because they're not going to be just like part of the screen. I want it to be 12 or nothing, and you'll see how I achieve nothing. So I took all this. Okay. And most of it is this fancy thing here that does nothing, but I just wanted to keep it. So most of that code is useless, really. All we needed was this and this canvas here that we need to use for injecting our charts. Okay, so I copied that, pasted here, and let's have a look here. So what I did for that row, because, okay, before I put that in here, I also made this row to disappear when it's smaller than medium. Because it gets squashed and ugly. If you go here to current finances, you will find that at some point it's really hard to read, and it's better if we don't have it. It looks better because, it's a long year, so there's no point looking at such graph on your phone. So it's better if it disappears when it's smaller than medium. So I say here, make it none. So D stands for display, none. Unless it's MD or bigger, then make it block. Display. Okay, and here we have our ID year chart, so it's for the whole row. And we have that column here. I made it 12, so it's always taking all the space. Here I didn't change much. I changed this to this here overview. That I didn't change because it's that thingy that does nothing. And in here I only added this ID, which I just changed because the ID was there, because when you have your canvas, you always need to be able to specify, to identify which one it is. Okay, so I have this ready. Let me just scroll here as well, so we just knock off this HTML. It's very similar for those two. First, I put a row for them. So here's the row. I made it visible always, so there's no D none here. Then I put an ID there for that row. And in here we have our first graph. So it's very similar again. And then here I'm saying, okay, if it's large, by default, make it full, 12. But if it's over large, make it 6. So we split half and half. So here it's nice and it's split 6 by 6. 12 is 100% of the space. If we go below large, it goes to 12. Okay. Didn't change much here. That income by type in here. Then this is that menu, and in here I just put that income by type ID for that canvas where we inject our graph. Exactly the same thing for the next one except for the naming. So this is copy paste, change the outcome by type and change the outcome by type ID here. So just two things to change, and that's your, and in here, oh, okay, so that's the thing I was struggling with a little bit. So I found that chart that we were using before, which was already in the bundle. It is an older version of the newest chart. So I found that there's charts.js 3.5, and I did use it, and then I found that it's all broken. So, but I'm thinking, because we did some work on 2.9 before, and you've seen how it's done, and it's independent because I use chart per page. So I import only for this page, this chart.js 3.1. I decided to go with 3.1 for this page, just so we can see the differences and have both options. And here I'm just saying, hey, fetch this charts.js from js/apps/myfinances/charts, because it's if the more files you have, the more you want to organize. So I'm thinking, okay, we have JS for some demos, which we get rid of at the end. This is the main JS. So I don't want to litter the main JS with like a lot of charts for different pages. I decided to split that using this structure here. So in apps, but it really doesn't matter. If you want to keep this file here, you need to reflect it in here, but that's it. Okay, so that's the chart.js. I still don't know why it doesn't see that reference, but anyway, it works. So let me just see here. So we have this dashboard. I'm thinking if you go here and you have this dashboard, all you need is a message saying that there is nothing to show. And so we can put I put it here, and if make calls, and just make sure that we have it here, make calls, yep, and then do all of this, else, and then close end if, and in here we just say no data. Cool. And in here also we can put exactly the same thing. So we can just put that if statement, make calls, and only then make those calls. Okay, and now we have this working a little bit better. So you have this dashboard saying if there's any point to render all of this and also start doing some processing, if there's no balance, none of that should happen. So we should just say nothing to show, and also our view says no current balance has been recorded. Please add at least one current balance record. And so you're gonna get a flash message here, then dashboard, and then just a small message below saying in here no data. Okay. Maybe one last thing. As I said before, I want to split these, so I'm gonna just move. Let me scroll up. First, second, third, and fourth tile, and then I want to take this and I'll scroll to here. Command X, here, and then all the way down to here, I think. Let me just make sure I'm looking at the right thing. Yep, that's where I want to paste it back. So now when I go back, refresh, and it kind of makes sense. You look at that and say, okay, I'm looking, and maybe some better description would be helpful, saying, okay, this is the last period. And oh, by the way, if you want to look at the whole year, this is the whole year, but this is not the whole year. This is just for now. And in here, we might maybe next video, I'll just finish with those two charts for the whole year, calculated for the whole year. But this is not. This is for the last period from the last balance check until today. Okay, and that's why I wanted to move those around. But anyway, that's the whole change to HTML file. And now we move on to charts.js. I can see the formatting is weird. There you go. So Option Command L fixed it. And in here we have 3 calls for our data and 3 charts that we put in there. I know it looks a little bit daunting, but once you sit down and spend some time with it, it kind of grows on you. To be honest, I spent maybe 1 evening, maybe 2 on this, and it feels very similar, very comfortable right now to look at it. So just, put your time in it, but it shouldn't be too scary. Anyway, that's the first get. That's the easy one because there's no chart in here. We call for my finances / current finances / get summary tiles, and then we send that. And you can see here we're using the jQuery to use the get function, and and the second argument here is supposed to be the callback, and that's a function using the data that is the callback data. Okay, and in here we just go through all the elements of the stuff that we are sending back. So let me just put a breakpoint here, and see what happens when I refresh. And let's see the result. So I'm gonna just select this and put that into a evaluator and evaluate it. This is what we get back. So what I'm doing in my JavaScript, you'll see I'm going through key and value, key and value, key and value, key and value, and I use it for only for good. Data, so that's the key and the value. So the name is whatever, the last balance, blah, blah. And we have some value assigned to it. So one thing is, so if the data name is error, that means we didn't get our data. We just have error. And we want to put that as HTML of the whole summary tiles div. It's the whole thing. So we would be all kind of just saying, sorry, there's no data to work off of. In here, else if we have last balance date, then we do this. We just put that date in there. Let me just release that. We just put that date there. And it's exactly the same string as we get from the backend. But you can see here, there's a bit of nice formatting with this euro sign and the delimiters. That's how I got here. So if it's error, make it an error. If it's the last balance date only, then just put that value directly into the, by the way, I'm using the data name in IDs. So in here, it's important that these IDs here, so that ID corresponds to whatever I put in here, okay? Because then we send it back in as JSON, and then we use that JSON to generate those IDs. And then we put that value there. And else, if it's, so it's either error or date or those monies. So if it's money, else here, we use this. It's a valid approach. So we use this new INTL, probably something from international number format, and we specify our region, and then we add some styling. So we say the style is currency and the currency is euro, and then we do dot format and we put that value there. Okay, and that's it. So that's all we need for this. Next function is this get for the get year chart, which also gives us some result. In here, I think I call it data. Here it's a result. No, it doesn't matter. If you call it here result, you have to call it result here, or res, okay? In here, the same data, data. And so just stick to the same naming both in the function and in here. And here is where all the fun happens. So first we grab this year chart canvas from our HTML. It's here somewhere. Then what you need to do is you create the config variable, which is an object. So I found it online on chart.js website, and I've done a lot of work in to get here and finding how to approach certain things. So I'll just tell you what I have, and feel free to check the documentation of chart.js. It's a lot of fun. I'm not going to go there now. I'm just going to tell you what I've done. So I assume it's going to be a line chart, but you can go between line and, let's say, scatter. Scatter is those dots. So you don't have the line connecting the dots. You have only dots, and it's pretty cool. So first I said I want to show, so sorry, let's go back here. So data, you add this labels, result labels, easy peasy. It's just an array in this case. Then you have those data sets, and these data sets are 3 different data sets that you can see here, here, and here. Okay, so first one is a balance checks. That's the label of type scatter, and then we take from the result, from whatever we got from views, and we get this data balance check, and that name comes from here, data balance check. Okay, that's our array of all the data. That's our data set. And then we have some border width and background. So that's how you get the background here, as you can see, and inside of those circles. And in case of a line, an area, you have this. This is the background, the blue, light blue, and this is the border. Let me just go back here. So that's it. Then we have the, again, balance today, scatter, today, data today, border 2, blah, 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 the same story. And in here, we get our estimated line. So that's the main piece of data, the most interesting stuff. And that stays as type line. We specify that line here, so we don't have to specify type in here. We just label it. We say what is the data. We say that we want to fill it. So that's where this nice shade comes from. We say what is the thickness of the line here. We say what is the color of each. So that's the background, that's the shade, that's the actual line. I say I want it to be cubic interpolation, so it's not, so it's not just a straight line in here. It's a cubic interpolation with monotone, and tension is 0.4, and point radius is 0. Because if I had that 1 set as 1, let me just Shift Command R, so we get the JS reloaded. And look at this. You see those little circles, and we don't want them there because it's every day there's a circle and it's ugly. So I want it to be 0. It looks way better. Boom, looks way better. Cool. And then there's some options. Maintain aspect ratio false. So I want it to stick to the canvas. If I move it around, it has to stay in canvas and not try to, not try to be bigger or smaller, so it has the same ratio, X to Y axis. It gets squashed, and that's fine. And I like that because it doesn't start getting out of the canvas here. Then we have some layout. So if you want to add some padding here and here, so that's just padding around the inside of canvas. Responsive true, so it does move when we move the page or resize the page. And here we have some plugins. So legend goes to the top, title, and it's very different from chart.js 2.9. So basically go ahead and compare what it was before, but that's the setup for 3.5. Legend goes to top, title, display false. We don't want a title there. Tooltip. So that's for our line graph, so you can just like move your mouse around, not on the line, exactly on the line, but you can have it here and you still see the tooltip, right? You can still see the numbers, and it's just nicer. Elements, so that's the point radius 4. If I set it to 10, it's gonna be just bigger. Those dots here, and they're not too bad. Well, a bit too big. 4 was fine. So that's the global, but you can also set it to none. And I was looking for it for a good while. And basically what you do, you have this global here, but you also can say point radius 0, and that's just for one data set. What else do we have here? Those scales here, that's useful as well. So what I was trying to do here is I was trying to filter out those dates and just leave the first of each month, which makes much more sense. But I couldn't do it. Here I have this callback, and this value is the thing that I'm supposed to use. It didn't work for x-axis. For some reason, I found that it's an issue that they're trying to resolve right now. So for now, it's not here. I'm just saying that we don't want a grid. We want the ticks to have auto skip, and also we want to display them. So these are the ticks here. So that's the the labels, and then we have the y-axis for here for the left side, and we say, okay, give me max ticks is 5. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the max. Some padding here, and the callback saying, hey, you're giving me 40000 in here, but I want to put that euro mark and this delimiter here, and that's the way I do it. I get this, I put that callback here, and I put that function here. So I say, hey, there's going to be a value index and values in here in this callback, and what I want to return is this intl number format blah 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 value. So using this value here, I put that to that format, and it gets formatted just like it's formatted here. So we have that format here. Oh, and we have to add this maximum significant digits 1. Okay. Oh, and then we have grid lines here. Grid lines. Oh yeah, so that's for the y-axis. So I wanted to keep them here, so I styled them in here. Okay, I don't think they work right now because they're supposed to be, or wait a second. Yeah, I think they're supposed to be dashed, but they're not dashed anymore. So I need to check that, and maybe in the next video I'll fix that. But anyway, that's what it is. So this is the config. So from here, that's just the config variable. It doesn't do anything. If I just left it like this, it will be just a big object in JavaScript doing nothing. But in here, I'm saying, hey, initialize a chart object from chart.js library using this canvas and config. Canvas is here. I grab that canvas here, and I created this config here. So that's all that happens here, okay? And that's how this is being built. It doesn't have to be returned anything. I don't have to assign that to any variable. It can be just called, and that's it. Oof, okay, that's this chart, the year chart, and now we have two donut charts that do pretty much the same thing, but with two different calls. Okay, so this one, this call here is get income or outcome by type. That's from the views, all the way down here. That's the call here, and we are also asking for get what income. So that's what I was talking about here. I'm getting this get what, and that's how you pass that get what. Again, we are grabbing some canvas by ID from HTML, and then we create some config. This one is way shorter. So what we do is we set it to donut. Then we have some data here, labels. Again, that's an array of labels that we get in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the labels here as well. And then we have the data sets. So sets because you can have multiple layers here, but I'm going with one layer. So it's just one data set here inside of an array. So you can have more of income here. And then this is the array from the res. So that's the res labels, res data. Then we have some background colors. I know I have only 4. I'm going to have only 4 data sets. No, sorry, data whatever. In legend 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why I said, okay, I'm going to set that to certain colors, because as far as I know, if I didn't do that, I would get some random, oh, sorry, that's all gray. So I need to specify something. I need to give them some colors, and just keep in mind that if I have more of these types, I want to also add more colors. So it makes more sense. We have some hover offset 4. So we have this hover here. I don't know exactly what it means, but it was there in the example. Some options here, again, maintain ratio aspect false. I don't want that to mess my layout. And also I added some padding, responsive true, and that's it. And now I'm just initializing it. Exactly the same story here, except For some naming, obviously, we're looking for outcome. Outcome, it's still the same as here. I should have changed that. Outcome. And then we have colors, as many colors as we have of those here. Okay. So, and that's it. The rest is the same and we're finished. Here we just initialize and we are finished. That's all I did. And I think I wrapped it up pretty neatly because it was a lot of work and it was, you know, it's just one video. So I hope you're happy with this progress, which I wanted to speed up because I feel the same pressure as you guys that we want to start doing the React part very soon. So we want to go through DRF, Django REST framework, and then we get to React. Okay. So just from the perspective of usage, in here we can sort out like this or filter out like this, as you did before. So it's pretty nifty. You can have a look at stuff like this or maybe like this and see, you know, stuff in different perspective. So it is pretty cool tool and it's free, and because it's free, sometimes it doesn't work, but usually, you know, you can get a lot from those charts. Anyway, I'm done for today. Thank you very much for watching, and next time, as I said, I'm gonna just slap those donuts here and maybe split the view a little bit better. Maybe do something for the savings before we move on. I just want to move on as fast as I can. I'll see, you will see. I'm gonna I don't know, I'll figure it out and we will move this stuff forward. Okay, thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.